Welcome to the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner. This week in the Royal Corner, Prince Harry in China advocating for sustainable tourism. Prince Harry's spare sells 6 million copies. Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, in an interview asked if she's starting a fashion line. Also on the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner, Prince William, the green-eyed king in waiting, embedded interview with Rhiannon of Sky News, qualifies him and her this week for Sycophants of the Week. And King Charles receives rebuke from Indigenous leaders from Canada over his parliamentary address. And finally, Kate Middleton, the indolent queen, isn't even recognized for her role as she is mistaken for her husband's assistant. All this and more on the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner. So before I jump into the meat and potatoes of this week's show, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's been enjoying my content, liking it, sharing it, commenting on it, because at the moment I have now got 1,378 subscribers. I started posting in earnest on the 7th of February, and in that time I've qualified for 4,000 watch hours. And what that means is I have qualified now to be a YouTube partner. And it's all thanks to everyone who's been listening to my content and sharing it. So I just want to say thank you so much to everybody. It's a pleasure to serve and it's a pleasure to be recognised. I'm trying to get to 2,000 subscribers. That's my next goal. And then after 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000 and into the stratosphere and beyond. Help me get there by jumping over to my website, which is deniseheadley.com, where you can make a donation. And I am very partial to free wings and chips and a Miranda. Or you can buy me anything else, because I'll be grateful for that too. Now that we've done the preamble, let's jump straight into the show, shall we, darlings? Right. So Harry's in China. So this week, Prince Harry travelled to Shanghai, China to advocate for sustainable tourism at the Eurovision 2025 Global Partner Conference that was hosted by Trip.com. He was representing Travelist, which is a non-profit he founded in 2019. And I thought to myself, look at this. He is out there doing sustainable work, focusing on the environment, doing things that are genuine. He didn't just rock up and do it and then said, look at me, here's the PR story, Rhiannon of Sky News and Prince William. What is this? The quiet disruptor, give me a break. But the point is he's been doing this for from time. And that's why people, look at Harry and see that he's a genuine person. And I thought to myself, I'm sure the green-eyed king has got some scallywag in there trying to undermine this particular project, because he always wants to mash up anything that Harry's doing. Oh, just on that note, very quickly, I'm going to get back to this story. Sophie Chanduka of Centre Ballet. Yes, my girl has completely erased everything on her social media about Centre Ballet. And she was an agent of the green-eyed king. I don't care what anyone says to me. So she's erased everything about her relationship with Centre Ballet all over LinkedIn, and that company that she set up with her brother, Tanashi Chanduka, Nandi Life Sciences, the US Texas-based biotech firm. If you Google it, their website is unavailable. Interesting, I thought, Miss Chanduka. Let's see what's happening with the Charity Commission. Anyway, let me get back to this Harry story and him in China. So yes, what I was saying, Harry is representing Travelist, which is the non-profit that he founded in 2019, and he was emphasizing the urgency for the travel industry to meet the climate and conservation targets that were set by 2030. And this is a very good description of Harry's convening power. He can get people together because this company has a whole range of very large names who not only work with what Harry's vision is, but also support, a much more eco-friendly user experience for travelers. And I thought this was a really positive story. You had the usual suspects with their malice machine talking about how Harry was discussing sustainable travel and then using a private jet. And I had to say to myself, really? Really? Last week, didn't Waity Katie, didn't she go to Glasgow on a private jet? And wasn't her husband flying on another private jet at the public expense? Were you having the conversation about emissions during that particular Puff article where you were talking about how fabulous they were because she mumbled her words and she wore the dinner plate flying saucer hat? Did you say anything then about emissions? No, I didn't think so. XLD, exhale and let it go. Prince Harry's book, Spare, has sold 6 million copies. And this is another good news story about Harry this week that I thought I wanted to share with you. So his book, Spare, has sold 6 million copies worldwide, and it was released on the 10th of January 2023. And it did become a sensation. It's been translated into 15 languages, and it's a commercial success for the couple, which is excellent. And as we meander into another good news story about the Sussexes, Duchess Sussex was asked if she's going to start a fashion line. Yes, she gave an interview recently to Fast Company, and they asked her about the future of her lifestyle brand, including whether she was going to consider a fashion line. And what she said was that as ever, it's focusing on the home at the moment, and it's rooted in the love story of your home and your garden. However, she did hint at the fact that there's going to be potentially in early 2026 some new products and maybe a little bit of a glow up of what's going on, restocking and having a look at what's coming next. So that is another good news story about the couple this week. Also in the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner, Prince William, the green-eyed king in waiting, embeds a Sky News reporter so that he can have a better forward-facing image to the public, which addresses two things: his laziness and his functionality. The article was entitled The Quiet Disruptor, and this earned Rhiannon Mills of Sky News Sycophant of the Week, along with the interviewee, the green-eyed king, Prince William himself. Now, before I delve into this story and as to the reason why Rhiannon Mills of Sky News is Sycophant of the Week, I think it's important to note a couple of things. Firstly, the use of an embedded reporter is to give you a favourable PR exercise. You're not going to be sharing tea and digestives if that person isn't on side, because you don't know what they're going to write. I mean, of course, you're going to see what they're going to write about you, because you're not going to let anything out that doesn't show you in a favourable light. But the whole point of embedding a individual next to a person of note is to give that person of note excellent PR. That's why when you see correspondence, war correspondence for argument's sake, embedded with this individual or that individual, you know that that individual can't get that close unless there's arrangements. You're not there to give a story that's going to not make the person who's embedding you look bad. So that's the point. So Rhiannon Mills writes this article and she talks about having a week with Prince William, and she goes through his itinerary, and we're going to chew all over that in a second as well. Another point to note about Sky News is that wasn't Prince Harry suing them? Didn't he get a settlement from them? Weren't they involved in phone hacking? Didn't you receive Prince William yourself with your greedy hands and your greedy licorice self? Did you not receive a sum of money from Rupert Murdoch, the same people who are now embedding the reporter with you to give you a favourable stance to the public? This is just a propaganda piece, and we see right through it. It's opaque as you. So Rhiannon Mills wants you, the reader, to believe that the king, one, the king in waiting, should I say, is not lazy, and two, he's relevant and functionally useful to the nation. So she has a week with him, and in that week we see him rushing here and rushing there and doing a whole range of things, not everything requiring a robe and servants, but everything requiring public money, of course, to, look after you, set up the stunts, sort out all the photography, and make sure everything is picture perfect for the theatre, which is your life this week with Rhiannon Mills. So on Tuesday, there was a surprise event that he appeared at where he took the microphone and spoke about personal connections, trying to be authentic. And this is him talking about the Rangers. Don't forget, he's got this dead documentary which no one's going to look at anyway. So that's what he did on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, he went to the Leith Community Centre in Edinburgh. How did he get here? Did he get there? Did he fly there? Were you talking about the emissions? Of course you weren't, Rhiannon, because that's not your function. You're just there to massage him and also his image. He played football with the little people and you took pictures and you talked about his impact. So presumably, if he can do, a corner kick, suddenly he's going to address the questions of homelessness on his estate where he's a slumlord, literally. Then on Thursday, he was at a naval ceremony, yes, where he was naming HMS Glasgow. We saw that, and the wife was like, she couldn't even remember her words and she was talking like this and nobody understood what she said. And then on Friday, there was a traditional royal garden party, which Rhiannon had the opportunity to presumably have wonderful hors d'oeuvres and mix with the higher echelons of society. That was the nature of it. So she wanted to show us this wonderful mix of him not being traditional. He's breaking with tradition. He's trying something new, but he's also trying to hang on to the past just a little bit. The whole thing was a veneer exercise with no substance, looking exactly at what he represents, what he benefits from, how he conducts his business, and also the nature of his functionality to the nation. What thing did he do there which was impactful? She then went on to discuss how he has convening power, and in his role as statesperson, he is able to garner the big thinkers, the big leaders, and create something of worth because he's a statesperson. She writes, "He is a man bestowed with so many traditional titles, all of which he eats from. It's a new role he's shaping for himself that's more intriguing." And she says, William is a quiet disruptor. Just listen to the language, a quiet disruptor. If you're disrupting things, aren't you messing them up, creating a storm, creating some sort of event, some sort of something? What are you disrupting other than our patience with you and this institution? She writes, in a week when Time magazine named the Prince and the Princess of Wales in its top 100 philanthropists for modernizing royal philanthropy, really? What does that even mean? What have they modernized? Have they stopped taking money from the poorest? Have they stopped rinsing out things from other people's countries? I don't think so. None of them are particularly headline grabbing, she says, because she spent a week with him in various engagements, but all are examples of how he's setting out to do things differently or underlying the challenges and the criticisms he faces of doing things in his own way. She then goes on to tell you what I told you before. He went to the community centre, he kicked the ball with the little people, and then she writes a glowing article about how he is so important and he's giving, what is it? He gives a voice to the voiceless, really? Is that just before he's done the pomp and ceremony and then walked off after the pictures are taken? Because we know none of these things have any substance, any meaning. Wasn't he dealing with homelessness on his estate where he's a slum landlord? What about the Earthshot Prize? Hasn't that died a death? It's just fizzled out. All of these propaganda pieces are just trying to create a better image for the future king so that we continue with this relationship and we never question the value of it. We're supposed to just, lap all this stuff up and suddenly smile. But the point is, he doesn't have the history of convening power. He's only recently being rebranded for our consumption. And what the public know is that he and his wife are lazy, they are entitled, and they serve no meaningful impact to the nation. And no amount of puff articles, propaganda pieces, or documentaries about, the Rangers or about early years is going to alter that image for the couple. And for that reason, Rhiannon Mills gets Sycophant of the Week. This is for you, Rhiannon. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rhiannon. Your contribution was invaluable. Also on the Headley Highlight Show's Real Corner, Sloth Queen in Waiting, Lazy Katie, is mistaken for the green-eyed king's assistant, not the queen in waiting. And this story is by Akshay, Patel and Lisa Letcher. Now, I think they also are contenders this week for Sycophants of the Week. Do come in. Take a seat. You are this week's also contender for Sycophant of the Week. So they go on to tell you that the Queen in Waiting, Lazy Katie, she made a witty comeback, something that warrants 6 paragraphs. And another question is, why does it take 2 sycophants to write one article? This article is by Akshay, Patel and Lisa Letcher. Couldn't one sycophant just have done maybe 3 paragraphs? Instead, we had a duo with 6 paragraphs. The pair conclude, Kate Middleton's witty comeback to once again being mistaken for Prince William's assistant during a care home visit. So firstly, they want to tell you that the only reason the person made a mistake was because they was in a care home. Not because she wasn't impactful on the last visit. The Duchess of Cambridge, alongside her husband, the Duke of Cambridge, swung by Cardiff's Shire Hall care home during the pandemic for an official engagement, but she was mistaken for a far less role on that occasion. She revealed to them, I did enjoy it. I hadn't played it before. The Duchess retorted with a chuckle, neither had we. That's why we were so bad. So obviously they lost. The royal couple both donned masks at the time, and the prince at the time explained, we have to wear masks because of the virus, but it's difficult to hear sometimes when you can't see someone's mouth. So he was, being very, very concerned during the COVID period when he went to visit that with his wife. At that moment, this lady Joan inquired about William's companion, the duo Wright. Is that your assistant? She inquired. And this is interesting. The whole article is about this, point, and it comes in the last 3 sentences. So Joan says during the course of the conversation, is that your assistant? And Kate showcased her very quick wit. And she said, well, I am your assistant. I've been doing that for a long time. And they wrote an entire article about that single sentence. My eyes are rolling, doing 360 degrees at this point. The picture also shows you William and Kate holding a number 19 ball because they were also playing virtual bingo. That was the point of the whole thing. But this time they didn't have masks and they could see each other's faces. But once again, it was an article to showcase them in a non-royal setting, mixing with the common folk, showing them as relatable because let's face it, this is the only time they're going to be actually pulling a bingo ball. It's never going to happen again until the next photo stunt opportunity. And for this article, the duo, the not so dynamic duo of MSN News, Akshay Patel and Lisa Letcher, get Sycophants of the Week, alongside with Rhiannon Mills of Sky News. All 3 of you, please do take a seat. We thank you so much. Sycophants of the Week, Rhiannon Mills, Akshay Patel and Lisa Letcher. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, darlings. Thank you so much. Please don't write anything else. And finally, in the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner, King Charles's speech on Canadian sovereignty draws scrutiny from Indigenous leaders amid colonial legacy. And what a crappy article. Well, it's not a crappy article, but it's a crappy title. Because really, all of the articles about the King's visit to Canada centered the King as acting as effectively a buckler and shield for Mark Carney against Donald Trump because of this whole idea that, Canada's going to become the 51st state. But what that whole exercise helped to erase was the questions of Canada's colonial history. And I made reference to that in 2 Royal Corners ago. I said that the King wasn't reading the room when he went out there and basically reaffirmed Canada's colonial, Britain's relationship with Canada and their sovereignty, because I argued that same point. And now we have an article this week which effectively was saying something very close to the same point that I was making. So in this article, it says Indigenous leaders voiced concerns about colonial symbolism, which effectively was what that exercise was for the King. It was colonial symbolism. Many First Nation leaders in Canada stressed the need for actual action, tangible action. The same sort of thing we're talking about when we were talking previously about the Green-Eyed King and his embedded, reporter buddy, Rhiannon Mills. The point is, there's no point in telling us about all these great endeavors. We've been listening to the great endeavors and the great plans that these individuals and this institution is going to do. However, actual, tangible, measurable, evidenced outcomes are very low on the ground. And that's the point that the First Nation leaders are making in relation to the King's visit to Canada, where he murmured something totally inconsequential about land. The government, he says, has acknowledged past harms against Indigenous peoples. However, reconciliation efforts, just as usual, have lost momentum in recent years. How familiar is this story with the proper examination of the institution of the House of Windsor? Wherever you go, you don't actually have that proper examination. You have symbolism, you have gestures, you have all of these grandiose puff experiences that 5 or 7 months down the road, it's just a list on an itinerary. There's no meaningful outcomes as a consequence of any of these things. Hashtag Kate's early years. What's happened with that? Just another puff exercise in media narrative. The whole visit by the King, Indigenous leaders felt, was a way of harking back to a colonial narrative, which effectively is one of settlement, conquest and destruction at the expense of Indigenous people. Professor David MacDonald, a political scientist from the University of Guelph in Ontario, was speaking from a Treaty 4 lands in Saskatchewan. Standing up to Trump, he said, was overshadowed Indigenous concerns completely, as if we matter just right now. That too is a strategy of settler colonialism. So basically what he said there, but I didn't read it very well, he said that because the whole thing, if you think about the media narrative, it was about, the King is standing up to Trump and, he's supporting Mark Carney. There was no conversation there about the impact of his visit on Indigenous people's claims to their lands, to the settler colonialism, which has impacted the Indigenous people of Canada to this day, where they have poor health outcomes, they have shorter life expectancy, there is significant systemic inequality in their communities, there's lack of proper, water and facilities. None of that was part of the conversation when he was there. No, it was just to put his arm around Mark Carney, and then the Indigenous first leaders have rebuked him for it. So I'm glad they did, basically. Like I said, mans don't know how to read the room, okay? Him and his side salad wife, they got no idea about what they actually look like to other people outside of the echo chamber that they occupy. Most people don't look at you favorably. Trust me, they don't. Anyway, gosh, it's moving on quickly. So I'm going to round this one up and give you the headlines this week. And don't forget, guys, keep on liking, keep on sharing, and keep on coming back. So this week, darlings, in the Headley Highlights Royal Corner, in summary, we had Prince Harry was in China because he was promoting sustainable tourism. The Bitterati tore into him to the extent where there was a local MP in this country saying that the hate machine has been monetized against the Sussexes. The Green-Eyed King, the superior leech in waiting, and his embedded please give me a good write-up, Rhiannon Mills, got Sycophant of the Week for that absolutely putrid article she wrote. Quiet disruptor, my back foot. Oh yeah, Meghan was asked if she was starting a fashion line and she said basically the sky's the limit and she's not limiting herself. And as ever, it's going to bring out some new products and stuff in 2026. Not looking so great, King Charles and the Plan B Queen get rebuked because basically they ignored first leaders, Indigenous people's needs when they went over to Canada because they basically trampled all over it, hankering back to a colonial narrative, being coddled by the past. And Lazy Katie was mistaken for the PA assistant for her husband. And they tried to blame it on the fact that she was visiting a care home. And they tried to suggest essentially that, you know, by inference, that was the reason why. It wasn't anything to do with the fact that nobody recognized her. Even the mature people didn't know who she was. And neither did they appear to care. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's Raw Corner. Come back next week. Jump all over the YouTube, become a subscriber, hit that bell notification, like, comment and share, and also make a donation at deniseheadley.com. Thank you for your listening ear and cut. Oh yeah, see you next week. And cut again. And cut.